Welcome to True Echo, where powerful stories echo the truth of resilience, justice, and unity. Today's story isn't just about a confrontation, it's about a community refusing to bow to hate. What happens when a hate group marches into the wrong neighborhood, thinking they'll be protected by law enforcement and fear? They meet the Reapers. This is the true heart of Southside Chicago, where legacy, loyalty, and pride run deeper than any flag. Stay tuned for a story that'll shake you to your core. The July sun burned over the Chicago skyline, casting a crimson glow across the city. On the south side, where the streets carried the echoes of struggle and survival, an eerie calm stretched over the neighborhoods. But underneath that stillness, something dark stirred, a rising storm, a tension so thick it could choke the air. Gregory Hall, leader of the far-right extremist group calling themselves the American Patriots, had made his declaration days ago in a viral livestream that flooded news outlets and social media. We're taking back the South Side. The Confederate flag will fly in Chicago once again. For Hall, it was meant to be a moment of triumph, his boldest demonstration yet, cloaked in the language of free speech and fueled by a dangerous blend of entitlement and hate. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the South Side was already awake. Already watching. Already preparing. Inside the familiar walls of Barber's Corner, the community's unofficial town square, the usual buzz of clippers and gossip was gone. Instead, a low murmur of dread and anger filled the room. Jamal Carter stood by the front counter, shaking his head as a video of Hall's speech replayed for the 10th time on someone's cracked phone screen. They think they can come in here with police protection and just stomp all over our home? Jamal asked, his voice rising, his jaw tight. Marcus Reed, grizzled and gray, nodded slowly. They think fear keeps us down. They forgot that we built strength in the dark. These streets raised fighters. Then came a voice from the shadows of the room, low, calm, but with the chill of iron. They'll learn. But not the way they expect. Heads turned as Dante, Ghost, Freeman stepped into the light. Tall, built like a wall, and wearing an expression that betrayed little but saw everything. A former Marine, Ghost had survived war zones most men didn't even dream about. But what made him truly dangerous wasn't his combat experience, it was the brotherhood he led. The Reapers weren't official. They had no website, no symbols. Just a silent, deadly network of trained men and women who protected the South Side with surgical precision. Ghost didn't give speeches. He didn't post online. He simply acted. They're not marching into a protest zone, Ghost continued. They're stepping into a chessboard they don't even know exists. Jamal swallowed hard. So what now? Ghost glanced at him, then at every man in the room. We let them march. Let them feel strong. Then we dismantle their illusion. The same night, on the top floor of the Bronzeville Hotel, Gregory Hall raised a glass of whiskey in celebration. Around him, his lieutenants laughed, boasting about taking back Chicago street by street. Confederate flags hung over their windows. Loudspeakers sat packed and ready for the morning. Kyle Foster, one of Hall's youngest recruits, stepped out for a cigarette. Southside's dead quiet, he smirked, puffing smoke into the warm night air. They're scared. But in the shadows, just across the alley, a pair of eyes watched him. In one swift movement, Kyle was grabbed, silenced, and gone. No struggle. No sound. Just a missing man, and a smear of blood on the pavement. The next morning, panic gripped the American Patriots. Hall barked orders, police scrambled, and reporters flooded the hotel entrance. But none of them had any leads. No footage. No witnesses. Just a bloodied glove, and the slow unraveling of the group's confidence. The morning sun did little to warm the frozen fear settling over the Bronzeville Hotel. Gregory Hall, once boastful and swaggering, now paced the lobby like a trapped animal. His people, 50 strong the day before, were huddled in smaller clusters, whispering nervously. They avoided eye contact with one another, each wondering the same thing: who was next? "Kyle was just out for a smoke," muttered one patriot, his eyes scanning the exits. "How the hell does someone just vanish?" Gregory tried to restore control, clapping his hands and demanding focus. "Listen up. We came here for a purpose. We won't be intimidated by cowards hiding in the dark." But his voice didn't carry the same force anymore. Not after last night. Outside, the police presence had doubled. Captain Raymond Reyes stood behind the barricades, his arms crossed and jaw clenched. Officers flanked every intersection, their faces unreadable behind mirrored shades. The city was bracing for something. Detective Kevin Jameson leaned against a cruiser, his eyes fixed on the Patriots' banners fluttering in the wind. He turned to Officer Davis. "We're babysitting a ticking time bomb." Davis nodded grimly. "Feels like a war zone. And we're stuck in the middle." Inside Barber's corner, Dante Ghost Freeman watched the live news coverage on a small dusty TV. His expression remained unreadable. "They're unraveling faster than I thought," Jamal Carter said, arms crossed. Ghost didn't answer. He was reading every movement, every inconsistency in Hall's behavior. "This isn't just about fear," he murmured. "It's about shattering their control. Piece by piece." Then came a knock at the back door. Sarah "Viper" Lawson entered, dressed in plain clothes but radiating quiet intensity. "It's time," she said, placing a tablet down on the table. It showed footage of the Patriots' march route, complete with GPS data, radio chatter intercepts, and digital surveillance markers. "They start at 9 a.m. sharp. They'll hit Michigan Avenue, then cut through 51st Street. Razor's team is already in place." Ghost nodded. "And the trucks?" "In position. Rooftop teams are armed with smokes and blockers. No casualties. Just confusion." He looked around the room. Marcus Reed and Jamal Carter stood nearby, silent, knowing full well what was about to unfold. This wasn't a protest. This was psychological warfare. By 8:50 a.m., the American Patriots lined up in formation. Gregory Hall wore a tailored suit beneath his bulletproof vest, a Confederate flag draped across his shoulders like a cape. He spoke into a megaphone, voice echoing with forced bravado. "We march for the real America. No one can silence us." Cameras flashed. Reporters jostled for position. The police formed a wide cordon, separating protesters from Southside onlookers who stood quietly at the edges, arms crossed, eyes cold. Then the march began. Flags waved. Slogans shouted. And hate filled the air. Then, boom. A deafening explosion shattered the tension. One of the Patriot trucks erupted in flames, a controlled detonation that sent smoke billowing across the street. People screamed, scattered, and fell to the pavement. "What the hell was that?" Hall screamed. "Where's security?" Chaos. Officers scrambled to reposition. Some helped bystanders to safety. Others frantically radioed for updates. But even the police were disoriented. And that's when the leaflets came. Thousands of them, raining down from the sky like ash. From above, sleek black drones dipped low and dispersed the payload. Each leaflet bore the same bold heading, "Know your neighbors." Underneath were names. Faces. Addresses. Employment. Social media handles. Every member of the American Patriots. Unmasked. Exposed. Hall grabbed one from the ground, his hands trembling. His photo stared back at him, alongside his home address and wife's phone number. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "They know everything about us." Panic erupted. Some patriots ran. Others began shouting accusations. One man punched another in the jaw, screaming, "You leaked this. You traitor." Gregory tried to rally them. "Stand your ground. They're bluffing." But it was too late. The group had fractured. And then came the final blow. A scream. People turned. A body dangled from a street lamp at the far intersection. It was Marcus, ironclad, Turner, Hall's enforcer. His lifeless eyes stared down at them, his chest carved with two chilling words, "Wrong city." Everything stopped. The megaphones went silent. The flags fell limp. Even Captain Reyes and the officers stood frozen in disbelief. From a rooftop nearby, Ghost Freeman lowered his binoculars. Ryan, Razor, Mitchell stood beside him, arms folded. "They'll never forget this," Razor said quietly. Ghost nodded. "It's not just fear. It's justice. The kind no court will ever deliver." Down below, Gregory Hall stood amid the wreckage of his twisted vision, broken, exposed, and finally afraid. And Southside Chicago stood tall, united in silence, the echoes of resistance rumbling louder than any marching boots. The scene on Southside streets was chaos wrapped in stunned silence. Ambulances wailed through the smoke-cloaked avenues. Police officers shouted into radios, forming frantic perimeters around the flaming wreck. The patriots, once puffed up with confidence, were now scattered like broken glass, eyes darting, breath shallow, backs turned to one another. Gregory Hall was nowhere to be found. "Where's Hall?" someone shouted over the crowd. "Where's the damn leader?" In the confusion, few noticed the unmarked black SUV that had pulled up just a block away, headlights off, engine quiet. Inside it, Gregory sat slumped, face streaked with sweat, shirt stained with fear. He hadn't run. He had retreated. The vehicle was commandeered by three men in plain black gear, reapers. "We're not going to kill you, Gregory," said the driver, his voice low and even. "You're going to watch everything fall apart." "Let me go," Gregory rasped. "I've got rights." "Not here," the man said. "Not today." As the SUV slipped through side alleys and disappeared into the industrial edge of the city, Dante, Ghost, Freeman remained on the rooftop, surveying the unraveling mess below. In his ear, Sarah, Viper, Lawson's voice came through the comms. Phase 3 complete. Police still scrambling. Media's lost the narrative. And the patriots? They're eating each other alive. Ghost's face remained unreadable, but his voice was cold steel. Good. Time for the final act. Meanwhile, in the heart of City Hall, Mayor Andrew Collins stood behind a podium, cameras flashing in his face. "We are aware of the tragic events that unfolded this morning in Southside. Let me be clear, violence of any kind will not be tolerated. An investigation is underway to determine who is responsible for the disruptions." A reporter raised her hand. "Mayor Collins, do you believe this was a targeted response by a militant group? Was it the Reapers?" Collins hesitated. "I'm not going to speculate. But we will find those responsible. And they will be prosecuted." But behind closed doors, in the secure conference room of the mayor's office, the tone shifted. Captain Reyes sat across from Collins, flanked by detectives Jameson and Davis. Their faces bore the exhaustion of men who knew the truth but couldn't say it. "You know, we lost control," Reyes said. "The people in that neighborhood took matters into their own hands. And they didn't miss." Collins massaged his temples. "And what are you suggesting? That we look the other way? That we ignore a civilian group carrying out vigilante justice?" "I'm suggesting we pick our battles carefully," Jameson said. "We just watched a hate group get dismantled without a single civilian casualty. The Reapers made a statement the city couldn't." Reyes looked the mayor in the eye. "Sir, Southside doesn't trust us. Maybe they never will. But the Reapers? The people trust them." The silence that followed said everything. Back at the Bronzeville Hotel, panic escalated into madness. The lobby had become a war zone of finger-pointing and wild accusations. "You leaked our info. They got your wife's number, you must have talked. We're being hunted like animals. Vincent, one of Hall's top lieutenants, stood on a table trying to calm the storm. Enough. Everyone just shut up. Silence fell. Vincent scanned the room. We came here thinking we were in control. But we underestimated them. We underestimated this place. Southside isn't just a bunch of poor neighborhoods, they're organized. Prepared. And they're smarter than we gave them credit for. Someone from the back called out, "So what now?" Vincent took a breath. We pack up. We disappear. We go home and never come back to Chicago. There were murmurs of agreement. Men started grabbing bags, tearing down flags, ditching their uniforms. Just then, police burst in, not to arrest, but to escort. Captain Reyes stood in the center of the room. This march is officially over. For your safety and everyone else's, we're moving you out. Now. Not a single patriot protested. They knew it was over. Back on the south side, Evelyn Johnson sat on her porch, rocking slowly in her chair, watching the police vans roll past. Good riddance, she murmured. Children rode their bikes again. The corner store reopened. The laughter returned, hesitant at first, then louder, brighter. Inside the martial arts studio, Ghost stood in front of a class of young students, demonstrating a simple defensive stance. No one spoke of the morning's events. No one needed to. Their protector had returned to his quiet post. And the Reapers? They vanished back into the shadows. No medals. No press conferences. Just peace restored. For now. The sun dipped low over Southside Chicago, its golden rays glinting off shattered glass, burned pavement, and 1,000 crumpled flyers still scattered across the ground. Yet, in a strange way, peace had returned. Uneasy, yes. Fragile, absolutely. But real. At the abandoned church, deep beneath its rotting timbers and cracked stained glass, the Reapers gathered one last time. The air was dense with heat and tension, though no words of triumph were spoken. They didn't celebrate victories. They prepared for futures. Dante, Ghost, Freeman stood at the center, surrounded by the most disciplined members of the network, Sarah, Viper, Lawson, Ryan, Razor, Mitchell, Malik Jefferson, and 2 new recruits who had proven themselves during the mission. We sent the message, Ghost said, his voice firm but measured. Loud and clear. He glanced toward a wall covered in hand-drawn maps and scribbled threat assessments. Hall's group had been erased from the board. Their red marks replaced with a simple black X. But it's not over, Ghost continued. There are always others. Always another Gregory Hall waiting to rise from the ashes. Razor leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You think they'll try again? Not here, Viper answered before Ghost could. We scorched the ground. Made it radioactive. No one with a lick of sense will come near Southside for years. That doesn't mean we stop watching, Ghost added. He stepped closer to the table, where a new set of documents had been placed, files on out-of-state militia groups, cryptic online posts, underground forums lighting up with fear, and with fury. They've been rattled, Malik said, tapping one folder. Some are already blaming each other. Others think it was the government. No one knows who the Reapers really are. Good, said Ghost. We don't need names. We need doubt. We need fear. Then he turned, sweeping his gaze over every member in the room. You know what we are. We are not revenge. We are not chaos. We are a firewall. The room fell silent. Ghost's voice lowered to a hush, almost reverent. We do what no one else can. Because we've lived in the dark, and we've made peace with it. We are protectors, not destroyers. But if you bring fire to our house, we'll rain down a storm so fierce, you'll never speak again. Every head nodded in agreement. The Reapers didn't need applause. Their reward was in the silence now gracing their streets. Across town, in a grim, sterile interrogation room, 3 of Hall's lieutenants, Vincent, Sean, and Travis, sat handcuffed. The room was lit by one buzzing overhead light, and the only sound was the occasional shuffle of feet from outside. Detective Kevin Jameson leaned against the wall, arms folded. Officer Samuel Davis sat at the table across from the men. "Funny," Jameson muttered. "You came here waving flags and shouting about pride. But now you're quiet." Sean scoffed. "You think this is justice? You let a bunch of vigilantes terrorize us. They tortured us." Davis leaned forward. "You walked into a community with banners of hate, shouted for its erasure, and expected a red carpet. This city is done protecting cowards in uniforms." Jameson added, "You're not the victims. You were the fuse to a bomb you lit. You're lucky Southside didn't show you real war." Vincent remained silent, jaw tight. He knew better than to argue. They'd seen something out there, something he couldn't explain. It wasn't police. It wasn't gang retaliation. It was discipline. Strategy. Fear. It was the Reapers. Meanwhile, Gregory Hall's fate remained a mystery to the public. His disappearance after the attack was reported but never confirmed. No security footage. No credit card activity. No sightings. Just one final image caught by a passing tourist, Gregory's battered face inside a black SUV moments before it turned down a one-way street and vanished into traffic. Conspiracy theories ran wild. Some said he faked his own death. Others claimed the FBI took him in secret. A few online commenters insisted he was abducted by Southside militants and now lived in some forgotten basement, forced to face the names of those he tried to erase. The truth? Only the Reapers knew. And they weren't talking. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened on the South Side. A local community mural was painted over a once vandalized wall near 51st Street. It showed a row of faceless shadows, standing tall, united, arms crossed like guardians. Below them, one line in bold lettering. "We protect us." Barber's Corner buzzed again with fresh cuts, domino games, and the comforting smell of coffee and aftershave. Kids played basketball at sunset. Mothers pushed strollers down clean sidewalks. And the memory of that fiery march? It lingered, but not as fear. As resolve. Because the message had landed, Southside was no one's to conquer. And if they tried again, the Reapers were always watching. 2 weeks had passed since the failed march, but its aftershocks still pulsed through every level of the city, from back alleys and barbershops to government offices and underground forums. Southside had returned to routine, yes, but something had changed. Something permanent. At City Hall, the press conferences had ended, and the mayor's team worked overtime crafting spin narratives for national media. Yet privately, the truth was undeniable: Southside had defended itself more effectively than any official response ever could. And quietly, officials feared what that meant for the future. In the underground command center beneath the old church, Ghost watched a wall of screens showing live feeds from various street corners. Viper tapped away at a laptop beside him, while Razor stood by the chalkboard tracking chatter on dark web forums. "They're rattled," Viper muttered. "Some groups are folding entirely. Others think the Reapers are government black ops." "Let them think whatever they want," Ghost said without looking up. "Confusion is protection." He leaned closer to the screen showing 51st and Drexel, where the march had been stopped cold. Today, there was a youth dance performance happening in the street, surrounded by neighbors and local business owners. Laughter filled the air. "Now that," Ghost said, allowing a rare smile, "is power." Behind him, Malik entered the room holding a slim manila folder. "You're going to want to see this," he said. Ghost opened it. Inside was a series of surveillance images taken just outside Indiana, members of the American Patriots who had survived the Chicago debacle now meeting with a new group, the Red Line Coalition, a rebranded militia preaching restoration of American purity. Razor's lip curled. They never stop. They just change names. They're planning something, Malik said. They're recruiting, rebuilding. Probably trying to save face after Gregory vanished. Ghost stared at the photo. One man wore a makeshift patch, a Confederate flag crossed with a wolf's head. Ego, Ghost muttered. They want revenge. But they're weaker now. Paranoid. Disorganized. Viper pointed to a second image. Not completely. They've got backing from a shadow financier. We traced some of their web hosting servers to offshore accounts. Ghost closed the folder. Then we stay ahead of them. Not with weapons. With exposure. Meanwhile, in a small rural town in Missouri, Gregory Hall opened his eyes for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. He was lying in a Spartan room, plain walls, single cot, security camera blinking in the corner. His jaw was sore. His wrists bruised. But he was alive. A voice crackled through an unseen speaker. You'll stay here until we're done. Gregory sat up, groggy and furious. You can't keep me here. I'm an American citizen. I have rights. The voice was calm, unwavering. And you abused every one of them. You led hate into a city that didn't ask for war. Now you answer to the people you tried to destroy. What do you want from me? Nothing. You'll be released. Eventually. But only after the truth sinks in. Silence. Then, the monitor on the wall flickered to life. Video footage of Southside residents played, families rebuilding, teens painting murals, elders gardening, children laughing. Then came another segment, his own speeches. His live streams. His threats. The contrast hit like a hammer. He watched. And watched. And kept watching. Every day. No torture. No beatings. Just the truth, fed to him, again and again, until even Gregory Hall had to face what he had become. Back in Southside, Ghost stood on the rooftop of a small community center, watching kids file in for an after-school program. He didn't wear a mask. Didn't hide. But no one ever questioned him. Some knew who he was. Most didn't. But all respected what he represented. Jamal Carter joined him, sipping a bottled water. You hear the feds are still investigating what happened during the march. Ghost nodded. They won't find anything, Jamal said. Nope. You think they'll come back? Jamal asked, quieter now. Ghost didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, they always come back. But the next time, we won't need smoke bombs or drones. The people are ready now. They've seen what unity looks like. Below, laughter rang out. A group of girls practiced double dutch while a small crowd clapped along. Ghost smiled faintly. You see that? He said. Jamal looked. That's why we do it. Not for revenge. Not even for protection. For that. He turned, his silhouette framed by the setting sun. And as the orange sky deepened into twilight, the Reaper's leader knew his job was far from done, but his community had been reborn. The calm that settled over Southside wasn't the kind born of forgetting, it was earned. It was vigilance draped in normalcy. On the surface, the community had returned to its rhythm, school buses rumbled down cracked streets, barbers cracked jokes between buzz cuts, and grandmothers haggled over peaches at the Saturday market. But beneath the surface, Southside had evolved. The Reapers had gone deeper underground. Surveillance became tighter. Recruitment shifted to younger, tech-savvy eyes, coders, drone pilots, high schoolers who could run facial recognition programs off a burner phone. In a dim-lit room above the martial arts studio, Ghost and Viper reviewed encrypted communications intercepted over the past 72 hours. What they found turned the air cold. A message thread titled, Southside Retaliation, Chicago Needs a Lesson. A new group, smaller and sloppier than Hall's, was preparing a symbolic strike, something that would make the Reapers bleed. They weren't interested in flags or rallies. This time, it was about terror. A single line stood out on the screen. If the cops won't stop them, then we'll go after what they protect. Schools. Churches. Old folks. Let them watch what happens when they lose what they love most. Viper's voice was ice. They're shifting targets. Civilian soft zones. Ghost's eyes narrowed. They want to cause trauma, not just chaos. It's psychological warfare again, but dirtier. Razor entered, holding a small USB drive. We tapped their Discord server. They've got a guy already in Chicago. Goes by Plymouth Rider. Former militia. Radicalized after the march. Ghost took the drive. We find him. We end this before it starts. Across the city, a quiet storm brewed behind government doors. Captain Reyes met with Detective Jameson and Officer Davis in a windowless precinct room. The map of Southside was on the table again, but this time, it was dotted with new concerns, intercepted threats, missing persons, underground hate forums lighting up with coded plans. I should have stopped it when it was a march, Reyes muttered, rubbing his forehead. Now it's a powder keg. Jameson glanced at the map. Sir, we both know who really stopped that march. And now, this next group. They don't even want attention. They want to break the community from the inside. Davis spoke up. We need to work with the Reapers. Reyes looked up sharply. You want me to make contact with a group we've publicly denied exists? I'm saying, Davis said, slowly, if they don't help us stop this, no one will. Reyes leaned back, face grim. Then God help us. Back in Southside, Ghost moved like shadow through the alleys near Bronzeville, where intel said Plymouth Rider had been spotted. The Reapers' comms were silent but alive. Unit 3, West Alley clear. Unit 4, visual on target entering abandoned pharmacy on 55th. Ghost reached the spot just as Plymouth Rider lit a cigarette behind the cracked door of the building. Pale. Gaunt. Twitchy eyes. His duffel bag bulged with suspicious hardware. Ghost stepped from the shadows. You don't belong here. Plymouth Rider flinched, reaching into his bag, until the red dot of a sniper scope landed on his chest. He froze. Ghost stepped forward slowly, like a wolf with time to spare. You came here to start a war. But you brought gasoline to a flood. Plymouth Rider's voice shook. You don't scare me. I'm not like them. I know what you are. You're just another gang in masks. Ghost stared at him, then pulled something from his jacket, a folded leaflet. The same one from the march. He handed it to Plymouth Rider. Read it. Every name. Every address. Every consequence. The man's hands trembled as he read. You don't scare us, he repeated, weaker now. No, Ghost said. But you'll fear what comes next. He signaled once. The door behind them swung open. 4 Reapers in black stepped forward. Plymouth Rider collapsed to his knees. I don't want to die. Ghost leaned close, whispering in his ear. You won't. But you'll remember this street. Every time you close your eyes. Later that night, Viper delivered a report to Ghost. Target neutralized. His online identity's been dismantled. His contacts think he flaked. He'll never operate again. Good, Ghost said. Let's get back to normal. What's normal for us? She asked quietly. Ghost glanced out the window. Children were still playing under streetlights. A teenager handed a bag of groceries to an old man. A mural of a Reaper, shadowed, faceless, stood proud on a wall nearby. This, Ghost said. This is what we fight for. Sunrise returned to Southside like a blessing. Not loud, not blinding, just gentle, golden, and sure. It spilled across rooftops, crept through half-open curtains, and shimmered over sidewalks still recovering from weeks of tension. But beneath that quiet beauty, Southside pulsed with a quiet truth. They had survived. Not just the march. Not just the threat. But the memory. Inside the martial arts studio, Dante, Ghost, Freeman wrapped a young boy's knuckles with care. The child was maybe 9, face full of curiosity but eyes older than they should have been. "Is it true?" the boy asked quietly. "Did you stop the bad people?" Ghost smiled faintly. "No," he said. "We all did." From the corner, Viper watched the interaction with softened eyes. Across the room, Razor taught a group of teens how to break holds and move silently. What had once been a war room was now a sanctuary. A training ground. A future. But they hadn't forgotten. That evening, the Reapers gathered beneath the church one last time. No mission. No enemy. Just memory. Ghost stood at the center, a faded newspaper clipping in his hand. It read, "White supremacist leader missing after failed march." Below it, a grainy photo of Gregory Hall, the man who thought hate would grant him power. "He's not our concern anymore," Ghost said. "They're regrouping elsewhere. Rebranding. But they won't touch Southside again." He tossed the article onto the fire pit. "They know better now." Razor stepped forward. "And if they forget?" Ghost didn't blink. "Then we remind them." Viper looked around. "What about us? We stay. We train. We teach. We build. And we wait. Not for war. But for warning signs." A hush fell. Then Ghost added, "The Reapers don't exist for violence. We exist so our people don't have to live in fear." They clasped hands, one by one, forming a circle around the fire. Not in celebration, but in vow. Elsewhere, the city of Chicago moved on, publicly. Mayor Collins stood before a podium once more, touting new, community outreach initiatives, and neighborhood-based protection programs. Behind him stood Captain Reyes, now weathered with the weight of choices not made. They never mentioned the Reapers. They never had to. Reporters still asked, what happened that day? Who exposed the American patriots? Who saved Southside? No answers came. Just a vague line, the people stood strong. Across the nation, whispers of the Reapers traveled like wind. On forums. In hushed coffee shop corners. Among other black neighborhoods with long memories and longer scars. Some doubted they were real. Others? They believed. Because something had changed. Hate had been challenged, not by law, not by headlines, but by the people it tried to crush. By shadows who protected light. And somewhere in a quiet corner of Chicago, Gregory Hall sat in a modest rented room, beard grown out, name changed, voice hollow. The screens were gone. The flags packed away. Every knock at the door made him flinch. He had seen what most never would. And he would never march again. Back on Southside, Evelyn Johnson watched from her porch as a block party lit up the street. Music blared, grills smoked, children played tag under twinkling lights. Jamal Carter danced with his kids. Marcus Reed handed out sodas. Peace had returned, not because the danger was gone, but because the people had taken control. Evelyn rocked gently, whispering into the dusk, "They thought they could tear us down." She smiled. "They didn't know we had Reapers. Some fights don't happen in headlines. They happen in the shadows, in neighborhoods forgotten by power, in families that refuse to fold." This story wasn't just about resistance, it was about reclamation. Of dignity. Of peace. Of place. As Dante Ghost Freeman said, We don't fight because we hate them. We fight so our people don't have to. If this story moved you, share it. Let it echo. Subscribe to True Echo for more powerful stories where truth meets courage. And tell us in the comments, what would you stand for, if no one else would?